Hello YouTube. Welcome to another episode of Killing for Company. So we're going to start today with talking about the record that's begun in the background. This is Elysian Blaze with Blood Geometry, record from 2012 on Osmos. Really cool black metal turned funeral doom sort of at the same time. Slow trudging, incredibly broad black metal. Check it out. So first up, just like the last few videos, I'm going to be talking about records that I picked up here in 2020, and in the future I'll have some more in-depth projects, but we will for now just keep going with that sort of narrative. Let me turn this down a little bit. Okay. So Diabolic Oath from Portland, Oregon. They've been through a few other bands in the past, like Blood Freak, for example, in the Pacific Northwest scene, but this is a blackened death metal, if you will. I really think of it as a death metal record. Profane Death Exodus is the title, and it was released on Sentient Ruin Records. So this one, for me, came across initially. I got it through Sentient Ruin as a promo when I was doing the final hour over in Kansas, and sort of the tag on it was that it was a fretless death black act. So that fretless piece was kind of intriguing, because you usually don't hear a lot of that with sort of that Black Death War style. I still very much consider it a death metal record, but I didn't know how that would affect the sound. And I kind of went into it expecting to get like some weird, almost like, Steve DiGiorgio Autopsy sort of vibe on a war metal record, and it wasn't that at all. So I initially sort of brushed it to the side and didn't think about it too much. But I kept coming back to it. Out of all the different sort of black death or death metal records with a black metal influence, this one kept on sort of circulating in the lineup, and it really just had to do with the tone or texture of that record. So I don't know if that is just the production value or speaks to that fretless component to the band, but this album here, just on black, so nothing too special, is really, it stood out essentially over the course of the year as one of the more intriguing war metal records or death metal record with a black metal influence. The pacing of the record got a lot of attention. The more, it came out in June, I want to say. So it just jumps out at you a bit more aggressively, and that kind of goes along with the expectation. But the B-side of the record, the back end of it, you get a little bit more long, rolling riffs where that texture really plays an interesting role. I think that's where the band's potential is. There's a lot of bands, especially on Sentient Ruin, who are kind of doing that style, sort of a modern take on war metal. In the future, I cannot wait to see what they do. This is their debut LP, a very young band. But I think sort of the ingredients that they have at the beginning of them, at the start of their sort of life together as a project, speaks to a sort of a kind of potential down the road. So if you like that, a little bit more of a modern war metal style, wanted to go for a little bit of a different sound. Keep that fretless piece in the back of your head and give this a chance. I think it's out on CD and it may be repressed as well. I'm not sure, but Diabolic Oath and Profane Death Exodus. So next up, another Pacific Northwest release, but very different style. This is Sölicitör with Spectral Devastation. They're out of Seattle, and they play a brand of, I would still call it speed metal, but it's at that precipice where it kind of reminds me of where like artillery, or even to a bit more sort of gruff way, like the Razor, that line that they walk, it has a bit more melody. So in that sense, it reminded me of artillery. They have a lot of comparisons to Chastain, but that I think primarily has to do with a female lead vocalist rather than the actual sound of the record. They've been around for a little bit, so I think this came out on Gates of Hell here in 2020. Got picked up by Cruz del Sur, which is, in terms of modern, traditional heavy metal acts, one of the, premier labels. So I'm sure they're going to get a lot of exposure in the future. But even out of the thrash records that I heard this year, this probably, I don't consider it a pure thrash band, but it holds up. It's aggressive enough to toe that line. There's even a few moments on it where there's a blast beat, so you can tell that they are a speed metal band that's sort of leaning towards more extreme music, which I would say is a narrative over 2020 you saw often. Bands playing traditional and heavy metal who probably, like myself, heard something more extreme initially, and then sort of moved in that direction later on towards a more traditional sound later on. But the subject matter here is very much in the speed metal world. So fearless, a late night, crazy, destructive life, leather, fire, criminal ambition. Very much a speed metal record in terms of themes and tropes they're exploring, but they've got a little bit more of a refined thrash rhythm section. So if you like your speed metal that's not completely falling off the rails and is executed with a great deal of precision, that's sort of that artillery piece for me. Check out Sölicitör. In terms of Amy Lee Carlson, who's doing the vocals here, she walks that line perfectly about trying to do aggressive, sort of gruffer thrash style vocals, but also has a vocal range to do cleaner parts. So she is a perfect sort of middle ground for me in terms of how I like my vocals in this style. My favorite track here is Spectres of War, probably the most thrash song on the record, but that's Sölicitör, Spectral Devastation. And that one actually I'll show to you here quick. We do have, I think I've been able to refrain from re-sleeving, but that is on red vinyl there. So next up, we got one that's a little bit sort of off the metal path, if you will, but something that I really enjoyed listening to. I think is adjacent enough to the genre, you'll enjoy it. So this is Gnawed, which is a death industrial or power electronic act out of Minneapolis, I believe. And they've been around for a little bit, but I think this is their first full length that's been pressed to vinyl. So this LP came out on Cloister Records, the CD out of Malignant, which I believe is out of Maryland, and has, I think, connections to the Rotted Life metal record, so you can see that this band is traveling in similar circles and speaking to a kind of similar audience. I liked this specifically just because of how minimal it was. A lot of power electronics, it really, you are there for that consistent static energy. This was much more low key, but you know, unlike a lot of the, when I circulate, you know, most metal fans are listening to dungeon synth, and I am still gaining interest in that, but a lot of it seems like music that is easily to walk, you know, it's easy to walk away from. Not a lot of it grips me emotionally, at least not yet. This is far more my speed in terms of something that's dark and ambient, but still speaks to me to at some level that pulls me back in for repeated listenings. Really cool stuff. A couple of shout outs I'll do in this video. So I'm by no means an incredible authority on this kind of music, but Autumn over at ThisMachineKillsMusic, I believe is the YouTube channel. I will link to her in the description for this. Check her out. She's got tons of knowledge surrounding this music, so a really cool watch if you're into this kind of stuff and metal's not quite your thing, and you're looking for more electronic or power electronic recommendations. Check out that channel. So this is Gnawed, Subterranean Rites. Interesting listen if you want something a little bit different than your traditional metal. Once again, on black, we'll let that go. Okay, actually the last three records here will be associated with YouTube shout-outs. So next up, I've got Escuela Grind with Indoctrination. So a grind / power violence act out of New York, Massachusetts. I believe they originally out of New York, then moved to Mass. And this was released on Armageddon Records and Regurgitated Semen. And they play grind. It's an interesting combination. So they've got that power violence side, so if you listen to like Infest, or they've got that grind side, so like Gnawed, but you know, there's also an element here of like electronic music, so it's a bit more, not quite as, I would say, subtle or refined as like Discordance Axis, but I think the second to last track here, These Insects Lived as Men, I believe is the title. It's like a 10-minute long sort of exploration in distortion and space. I'm sorry. So as a grind act, it was something unique. I did not expect that. And looking over the track list, I did not know that the running time would be there for me. So when that song came on, I was sort of waiting for it to end, and then I kind of just realized it's a totally different angle altogether. So if you dig the bands that I mentioned, or like Fuck the Facts, Gnawed, Infest, Discordance Axis, this is definitely a band to check out. And I heard of this through Jason Hook. So I know he hasn't put out a video in a minute, but get into it with Jason Hook. He's got an awesome channel talking a lot about, you know, grind and hardcore, crust, a little bit of stuff in that world as opposed to, you know, a pure metal channel like what most of this channel, or I'm guessing if you showed up to this, you're primarily a metal fan, but if you wanted some more hardcore recommendations, he's got some newer, like, he's picking up more and more metal stuff, I think, so he showed up on the live streams. This one's on sort of like a clear and yellow splatter. Very cool. So that is Escuela Grind with Indoctrination. I'll also put a link in this video for Jason's channel. And last, but not least, Árstíðir lífsins. So I'm not going to pronounce the name of this record. It's in Old Icelandic, so I'll just leave a link and you can find it instead of me trying to butcher this name. If anyone's come across my Instagram, I've been talking about this record a great deal just because I really love what this band is doing. Unlike a lot of the other pagan or folk black metal projects, this is just, it has so much more ambition in my mind. The scale of this record, the scope, the breadth of it, like, it's difficult. This thing is around 80 minutes long. It's a double LP. This is on Van Records. And, you know, it's difficult, I would say, to break into a genre like black metal, where so much of what is offered as credible is really just rehashing, I think, very familiar themes and tropes. And this is by no means the first pagan black metal band or anything like that. So they're definitely playing in the style of, you know, Windir or Moonsorrow. But like those bands, this is, you know, incredibly nuanced and patient and mastered for people who sincerely care about the subject matter. So my last YouTube shout out is going to go to Ave Mors, who does these really cool like adventures into nature, and I think it's primarily a black metal channel, but he did a really in-depth review of this, and the two major points that he brought up were, you know, authenticity. I think the members of this band have actually an education in Icelandic and Norse mythology, so, you know, they're speaking from, you know, from a lot of experience and knowledge surrounding this subject matter. And this other point that sort of stood out to me was that it's like a world-building project. There are some very quiet moments on this record, and to me, when listening to it, it sounded like, you know, like a very, like a prayer, if you will, like an individual actually talking or offering up some kind of worship to a Norse, you know, god, Norse god, and that does not, it's not these incredibly intense, violent moments. They're actually almost, dare I say, intimate. Like, there's this moment of vulnerability that this band is willing to walk into with a black metal record due to their sincere commitment to the mythology and folklore associated with the project. I know that may seem like nothing impressive, but to this level and extent that they go, there are so many times in this record where everything just gets quiet and you have this like spoken word. I don't know what they're saying. It's old Icelandic, so I have no idea. But the impression I get is that we have sort of a protagonist who's having a conversation with the deity. And then that launches into these great pagan black metal moments full of all the instruments and dynamics and that you're used to. But to do it with this kind of commitment is worthy of all sorts of praise. I will continue to talk about this project probably until, you know, I exhaust every nuance that you could explore. But if you like great black metal, if you love pagan black metal, please listen to this record. Árstíðir lífsins, like I said, I'm not gonna butcher the title. I'll put a link in it. This is a double LP. It came out here. It's got like this crimson marbled sort of look to it. Really interesting stuff, but once again, it comes with, you know, the packaging here is great. There's, you know, old photos. All of this is text that I cannot read, but once again, you know, Windir was like that. Those records originally, I believe, were all in Norwegian or Old Norse, and then were later translated just due to the popularity of the project. But anyway, amazing record. If they've got, you know, translations here, but what can I say? I've exhausted myself trying to praise this album. But Ave Mors, I will link to that channel here, and that's going to be this episode for Killing for Company. Thank you for watching. I'm going to do another video here because next week I've been trying to do a weekly update, and next week I will be, I think, in Louisville, just trying to get away for the weekend, so I won't have time, or I'm not thinking I will have time for a video. So I'll do 2 here this week, and, you know, probably space them out. But so you should have at least 2 videos coming from this channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll post all the information for the names that I, you know, was unable to pronounce on this video. I'll make sure that you get a chance to check them out. Thank you so much for watching, and that's all for Killing for Company. See you next time.